السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Last week we had started the topic of Witr, and we had gone through the how many rak'ahs of Witr we can read. We have had read that we can read one rak'ah or three or five or seven or nine, and there were different ways to perform those rakat. Now the next issue on the topic is about the qunut, of the supplication of qunut in witr. And there are different aspects of it. One is that where we are supposed to do this qunut, before ruku or after ruku. And then when we read this qunut, should we read it loud or should we read it quietly? And the third issue is, should we raise in our hands in dua as we do dua, or we shouldn't raise them? And the fourth issue is what to read in qunut, or in other words, what are the duas of qunut? And the fifth and final issue is that what is the position of prolonging the qunut too much? So the first thing is about the position of this qunut, whether it's before ruku or after ruku. When we see the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what we categorically got in a hadith is before ruku. But when we see the action of of the Sahaba as well, and action of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for qunut of Nazila, when he supplicated against kuffar, then that is after ruku. And Sahaba, they some of them, they used to do this qunut of witr after ruku as well. And salah is something which you cannot do from your own. So these type of things, there cannot be qiyas involved there. So when Sahaba, they are doing something like that, that is considered that they must have seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or some evidence from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do that. Because Sahaba, they cannot do something in worship inside prayer from their own. But as I mentioned, as we go through in detail, that what is categorically proven from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the position of this qunut of witr, that is before ruku in witr. So that's why the preferred position for that, all different positions, like whether you do it before ruku or after ruku, both of them are allowed, but the preferred position is before ruku for the reason I mentioned. So the first hadith is from Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhu. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يوتر بثلاث ركعات. He says that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to pray witr with three rakats. كان يقرأ في الأولى بسبح اسم ربك الأعلى. In the first rakah, he used to recite سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. وفي الثانية بقل يا أيها الكافرون. And in second rakah, he used to recite قل يا أيها الكافرون. وفي الثالثة بقل هو الله أحد. And in the third rakah, he used to recite قل هو الله أحد. ويقنط قبل الركوع. And he used to do qunut before ruku. Now this hadith is sahih, and this is from Sunan an-Nasai. Then there is another hadith from Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The narrator says that Sa'altuhu anil qunuti, that I have asked Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu about the qunut, whether it's qabla ruku or ba'da ruku, whether it should be read before ruku or after ruku. فقال قبل الركوع. So Anas bin Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that before ruku. قال قلت فإن ناسا يزعمون أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قنات بعد الركوع. So the student of Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that I asked Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that many people, they believe and they conceive that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he observed qunut after the ruku. So Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he replied that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam observed the qunut after the ruku for a month, invoking curse upon those people who had killed men among his companions, who were called the reciters. So there were 70 reciters, Qurra, from Sahaba who had been killed and martyred by kuffar. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he used to curse those kuffar in his salah, and this was in obligatory salahs in the last rakah after ruku, raising hands loudly. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to do this qunut against kuffar. So this hadith is from Sahih Muslim. So in this hadith, Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he is explaining that the qunut which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to do against kuffar for a specific time, for a limited time, not on a continuous basis, like the qunut of Witr is something regular. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did that after ruku. But for qunut of Witr, he used to do that before ruku. And then Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, this is a third hadith from Sunan Ibn Majah, that Su'ila anil qunuti fi salat subh. He was asked about qunut in the Fajr prayer. Now, when we talk about Fajr prayer, now we are talking about qunut in Azla. Qala kunna naqunutu qabla ruku'i wa ba'dahu. So he said that we used to do qunut before ruku and after ruku as well. So sometimes before ruku, sometimes after ruku. So this hadith is Hasan from Sunan Ibn Majah. So from this hadith, we can see that it's not like strictly specified here or limited here that kunut against kuffar will be after ruku only and kunut witr will be before ruku only. Rather, even qunut against kuffar is before ruku as well and after ruku as well. So that's why, because of this reason, as I mentioned, that it's allowed. These are different options in qunut, as there were different options in witr as well. That whether you are going to perform one witr or two or three witrs or more. And when there were three witrs, then there were two options. Either you read them three together without sitting for tashahhud in the second rakah, or you separate two rakahs from the third rakah of three witrs. So same applies here, that there are different options available here. You can do it before ruku and after ruku as well. But as I mentioned that categorically, what is proven specifically about witr from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is before ruku. So before ruku should be practiced as well. The situation is that majority of Ahlul Hadith, they had this practice. So this is from practical point of view, that they have this practice to do kunut after ruku only. So it became like a practice where people, they think that the correct position is only to do kunut after ruku only. And over awamun nas, over common people from Ahlul Hadith, they think that maybe doing kunut before ruku is not correct. That is not the case. As I mentioned that doing qunut before ruku is perfectly all right. And this is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we should make sure that we practice this sunnah as well, to do qunut before ruku as well. So the other issue, quickly, if I can mention here, is that when we see the ahadith where raising the hands have been mentioned, most of them, especially those which are from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we can see that wherever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did qunut after ruku, mainly the qunut like limited qunut against kuffar, for example. There was a qunut which was after ruku, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he raised his hands for dua, and he was reading loud. And there are narrations proven from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of them, they mention that the word is saying Ameen on that. although this is disputed among fuqaha and scholars. But the thing is, when Imam says something loud, there is no harm in saying Ameen loud behind the Imam. The qunut which is before ruku, there is nothing specific mentioned about that from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether he raised his hands or not. So default position, the preferred position there would be not to raise hands and not to read loud, because salah by default is quietly, unless something is proven specifically in salah that that is supposed to be read loud, then you can read that thing loud. So as far as the amal of Sahaba is concerned, again, both positions have been proven from Sahaba, that some of them they used to raise their hands before ruku, and some of them they didn't raise. And same applies after ruku as well. Some of them they raised hands after ruku, and some of them they did dua after ruku without raising hands. But as I mentioned, that the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that after ruku, whenever he did qunut, he raised his hands, and nothing such is proven before ruku. So what I can say from this is that if you are going to do qunut before ruku, then it's better not to raise your hands and better to say it quietly. But other option is available as well. And if you are going to do qunut after ruku, then it's better to raise your hands and do it loud. So this is the position of raising the hands and whether you should do it before ruku or after. Then the next issue is that what to read as the dua of qunut. Then the famous dua and the proven dua from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is specific to the qunut of witr. As I mentioned, qunut is of two types. One is general qunut, like you can do many duas in that qunut, and that qunut could be in the last rakah of fard prayer as well as witr. But when it comes to the specific qunut of witr, then there is one dua which is proven from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that dua is Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt, wa afini fi man afayt, wa tawallani fi man tawallayt, wa barik li fi ma a'tayt, wa qini sharra ma qadayt, fa innaka taqdi wa la yuqda alayk, innahu la yadhillu man walayt, tabarakta rabbana wa ta'ala. Now this dua, Hassan bin Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he taught me these kalimat, these words, so that I read them in my qunut of witr. So this is the dua which we must memorize, and we should read it in over qunut of witr. Along with that, there is another hadith which is proven as well from Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He says that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to say at the end of witr. Now, this end of witr has been understood in two ways. One is that end of the qunut of witr, like you read this dua in qunut, and one could be towards the end of witr, end of tashahhud, like when we read uh, uh, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin, and after that we will read Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhabil qabr wa min adhabi jahannam, and after that dua, this dua could be read. So both positions are fine, whether you read it to before taslim or you read it in qunut of witr. And this dua is Allahumma inni a'udhu biridhaka min sakhatika wa bimu'afatika min uqubatika wa a'udhu bika minka la uhsi sana'an alayka anta kama asnaita ala nafsi. Now this dua is authentic as well. Now the issue of raising the hands, which I uh, mm, uh, briefly mentioned when we were mentioning the whether you should do qunut before ruku or after ruku. The detailed evidence for that raising hands in qunut is as mentioned here on these slides. Anas bin Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, in the same story of Qurra reciters and about the story of their killing. He says that لقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كلما صلى الغداة رفع يديه يدعو عليهم. That whenever Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam he prayed the Fajr, he raised his hands and prayed against those kuffar who killed the reciters. This hadith is Hasan, and this is recorded with these words in At-Tabrani and Al-Bayhaqi and many other books. And then Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, next is about the issue of wiping your face after doing dua. Now, the narration about that is a daif. So that's why it's better not to wipe your hands on the face. By better, I mean that you shouldn't wipe your hands on your face. But if you see somebody is wiping, then you should not bash that person, because there is a difference of opinion among scholars about the authenticity of the narration. Although this narration is daif, but we should not label a person who is wiping his face as an innovator. Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam idha rafa yadayhi fi du'ai, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to raise his hands for dua, lam yahuttahuma hatta yamsaha bihima wajhahu, so he wouldn't lower his hands until he had wiped his face with them. But as I mentioned, this hadith is daif. So the sunnah practice would be that you raise your hands for dua if you want to raise your hands in Witr. And when you finish your qunut, you just leave them down without wiping your face. Now, the last and final issue, and after that, brothers, they can ask questions, is about the issue of prolonging the dua in qunut. There are two issues here, whether we have to stick to the proven words of Sunnah for Qunut only, or we have the option to read and to do some extra du'as. The answer is yes, we can do extra du'as as well. Then the second question is it a good practice, or this is a Sunnah practice, or this is the practice of Salaf or not, to prolong the dua too much, so much so like for, like let's say for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes, for 10 minutes, like that. Then this is a practice which is not proven from Salaf. And this is exaggeration. This is too much. Because whatever we can see, the du'as, different du'as from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or for companions, those could be maybe read maybe in couple of minutes. So that's why prolonging dua too much, this is a new practice which should be avoided. I will go through a hadith from Sahih ibn Khuzaimah, and this is the practice of Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was made Imam by Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And this is the famous hadith when Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he saw, and this hadith I am going to mention here because this hadith mentions the maximum length of dua practiced by Sahaba in Qunut of Witr. Abdul Rahman bin Abdul Qari, he is a narrator. He says that Kharajtu ma'a Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu laylatan fi Ramadan ila al-masjid. He says that I went out with Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu one night in Ramadan towards masjid. فَإِذَا النَّاسُ أَوْزَاءٌ مُتَفَرِّقُونَ. People, they were having their own separate jamaats. Few people standing here. يُصَلِّ الرَّجُلُ لِنَفْسِهِ. One person is just offering his own prayer alone. And وَيُصَلِّ الرَّجُلُ فَيُصَلِّي بِصَلَاتِهِ الرَّهَدْ. And then there is another person, he is imam and few people standing behind him, like that. فَقَالَ عُمَرُ إِنِّي أَرَى لَوْ جَمَعْتُ هَؤُلَاءِ عَلَى قَارِئٍ وَاحِدٍ. I think they are having these separate jamaats in masjid. Why shouldn't I just gather them on one qari, on one imam? Lakana amsalu. Then that would be better, because when there are different imams there, of course all of them would not be the best of qurra, and they won't be the full hafiz of the Quran. So it would be better if we get the best of the Qari among Sahaba available and we make him Imam for this Jama'ah. ثم عزم فجمعهم على أبي بن كعب. So Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who is one of the best Qurra among Sahaba, he was made the Imam to lead the Jama'ah. ثم خرجت معه ليلة أخرى. Now Abdul Rahman bin Abdul Qari says that another night I went out with Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu again. وَالنَّاسُ يُصَلُّونَ بِصَلَاةِ قَارِئِهِمْ. Now people, they were offering their salah behind this Qari Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. All of them behind him. قال عمر نعمة البدعة هذه. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that this new decision is a very good decision, that instead of having separate, jamaats, and they are interfering with their voices on each other as well, and then all of them, they are not the best of the Qurra as well. So this new practice is better than the old practice. والتي ينامون عنها أفضل من الذي يقومون يريدون آخر الليل. So, and those people who are sleeping at this moment, when these people, they are offering their Salatul Layl, which is the first part of the night, like we offer in the first part of the night straight after Isha Salah. He said that those people who are sleeping now with the intention that they will wake up later part of the night and then they will offer this Salah at the later part of the night, they are better than these. Because we know that offering Salatul Layl at the last part of the night is the best practice. وَكَانَ النَّاسُ يَقُومُونَ أَوَّلَهُ. So people, they used to do this qiyam in the first part of the night for obvious reasons, that people, they have to, like when you want to get all the people together, then it would be easier for them to get together for this jama'ah in the earlier part of the night. Now, this from this sentence forward will be something related to our topic, that how much dua they used to do. وَكَانُوا يَلْعَنُونَ الْكَفَرَةَ فِي النِّصْفِ. So first half of the uh, Ramadan, Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu used to do qunut of nazila, like doing lana, curse on kuffar. How he used to say, Allahumma qatilil kafarat alladhina yasudduna an sabilik. Oh Allah, kill those disbelievers who hold people or who stop people from your way. وَيُكَذِّبُونَ رُسُلَكَ, and they deny and they refuse the prophethood of your prophets. وَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْدِكَ, and they don't believe in your promise. وَخَالِفْ بَيْنَ كَلِمَتِهِمْ, and you differentiate and make them differentiate with each other among their kalima and among their word or among their positions. وَأَلْقِ فِي قُلُوبِهِمِ الرُّعْبَ, and you may put fear in their hearts. وَأَلْقِ عَلَيْهِمْ زَجْرَكَ وَعَذَابَكَ, and put your punishment on and azab on them. إِلَهَ الْحَقِّ, O Ilah, worthy of worship, who is truthful. ثم يصلي على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, and then he used to do a salah ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. ويدعو للمسلمين بما استطاع من خير, and then he used to do dua for the sake of Muslims by doing istighfar for mu'mins and Muslims. وكان يقول إذا فرغ من لعنة الكفرة وصلاته على النبي واستغفاره للمؤمنين والمؤمنات ومسألته. So when he used to finish this curse on kafara, on non-Muslims, and salah on Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and istighfar, seeking forgiveness for mu'mineen and mu'minat, then he used to read this dua, the next dua, which is also the dua of qunut of nazila. Allahumma iyyaka na'budu wa laka nusalli wa nasjudu wa ilayka nas'a wa nahfidu wa narju rahmataka rabbana wa nakhafu adhabaka al-jid inna adhabaka liman adayta mulhiq. And after that, summa yukabbiru wa yahdi sajidan. After that, he used to say Allahu Akbar, and he used to go to sajda. So again, this dua would take a few minutes. So that's why the best practice would be that Imam should limit his dua to the practice of the Salaf instead of prolonging it too much. Like sometimes the Imam, they prolong it for 10, 15, 20 minutes. That is not a good practice. Brothers, if they can, if they want to ask any questions, they can ask. The thing is, the first question is, can you confirm the moon sighting situation before beginning quickly, if possible? Maybe this message came through before, which I didn't notice. Uh, Last month, according to Qura calendar, they thought that the month of Rajab would be 29 days. But when they were doing moon sighting on 29th of Rajab, it was cloudy in Saudi Arabia, so they couldn't see the moon. So when they couldn't see the moon, the true Islamic position would be that the date of true Shaban is different from Qura calendar now. So tonight or today was 29th of Shaban according to Qura calendar only. But actually, it was 28th of Shaban. That's why the moon sighting, the true moon sighting will be tomorrow. And then we will know that whether the Ramadan would start from Tuesday or Wednesday. And most likely it would be on Tuesday because the crescent moon is has already born even as we are talking. So it will be quite of big size. Uh, but Allah knows the best work would be the situation tomorrow evening. So whatever the situation is, it will be confirmed tomorrow. And if it's on Tuesday, then Taraweeh will be tomorrow night, inshallah. Uh, is it proven to do the dua every night? Dua is proven that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do qunut. Now to say whether it is proven every night, such this is not the fiqh way to ask for dalil. Because if we ask dalil this way for every action, we can't say that it can be proven. For example, Ahnaf, when they cannot defend themselves that they are not doing Raful Yadain in Salah, they pose the same question by saying that prove it that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did Raful Yadain in every Salah. So the thing is, whatever action is proven from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is no clear evidence that this was done occasionally, then if somebody performs it every time, then we cannot blame that person. But as I mentioned that because there is so much variation proven for this dua, and part of that variation is not to do qunut sometimes as well. So the best practice would be to sometimes do qunut and sometimes don't do qunut. Sometimes do it before ruku, sometimes after ruku, and sometimes don't do it altogether. But if somebody fixes one practice out of that, then that person is not blameworthy either. Uh, the main dua, as I mentioned, of qunut of Witr. Next question is that doing dua for forgiveness and not doing dua against disbelievers, is it enough? Even if you don't do none of these two, you mentioned dua for the forgiveness of Muslims and dua against disbelievers. Both of them are not primary parts of qunut of Witr. The primary part of qunut of Witr is Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt wa afini fi man afayt. That dua. So that's the dua which we should read as the first priority, and after that everything is extra. Now, Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt. There is a difference of opinion whether when Imam is reading, should he read with the plural form of the sentences or he should read with singular words. There is a narration about that which says that Imam should not single out himself with dua, but that narration is daif. So singling out with the dua with the intention that everybody else is included, there is no harm in that as well. So if somebody says with the singular words by saying Allahumma hdini fi man hadait, and his intention is that everybody is included in that, but he wants to stick to the sunnah words, then that would be the perfect practice and good practice. But if somebody changes it with plural, then that's not a big deal as well. So if somebody changes the words with plural words to because he is an imam, then that's not end of the world as well, and that should not be made a major issue as well. Because at the end of the day, this is a dua, and in dua there is uh, the field is a bit vast than other things. Can you do qunut nazla in witr when praying on your own? As I mentioned that qunut nazla and qunut of witr, there is no major difference among these two. So when you are going to read Allahumma hdini fi man hadait, after that you can do qunut nazla, because qunut nazla is not limited about doing dua against disbelievers. Qunut nazla includes dua for the forgiveness of Muslims or any general duas as well. So when you are doing a qunut in witr, because qunut of witr is something which is proven on regular basis. Qunut in other prayers, the although some fuqaha or some sahaba they made this practice that they used to do qunut in fard prayers, especially in fajr prayer on regular basis as well. But what is proven from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that in fard prayers his qunut was on temporary basis, but the continuous and regular qunut is in witr. So when qunut is available in witr on regular basis, then the option is still there in qunut of witr to, after reading qunut of witr, dua of qunut of witr, Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt, the option is available to do whatever dua you want to do. And that dua can include all those dua which you recite in qunut of nazila. Wouldn't time be open as well? No specific time proven? Uh, no, because as I told you that there is a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he stopped from doing takalluf or being over the limit in dua. So, for example, a son of a companion, he was doing dua and he was specifying it too much. Oh Allah, give me a house in this side of Jannah, and that house should be like this and that and that. So he stopped him and he said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped us from doing dua in this way. So doing takalluf or too much in dua, dua should be jami, comprehensive. And this is the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the practice of Sahaba. So prolonging the dua too much is not of use actually, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he never did too much or too prolonged dua in his life. Even whenever there was the prolonging in as-salah, like in Salatul Kusuf or Khusuf, that was by doing long ruku or doing long qiyam. But as far as the dua is concerned, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his duas used to be quick, brief, and to the point. So that is the sunnah way. Uh, as I said, it's better to do few minutes. If somebody exaggerates, then we can stop it if we have authority to stop it. Because stopping somebody is always goes back to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when you see somebody doing something wrong, then you should stop him with your hand, which means with authority if you got the authority. If you don't have the authority, then advise them with your words. Tell them that this is not a good practice. If you don't have even this authority, because it creates fitna, for example, or the person, you think that the person is with so much authority that he will bash you or he will harm you, then at least you feel that this is a wrong practice, and that is the lowest part of iman. So that is in general. So when you know that something is not a good practice, then you, if you got authority, like in masajid, the trustees, they have authority. So if trustees they think and they know that this is not a good practice, they can advise their imam. Uh, Other people, they can speak to their imams as well uh, in uh, khalwa, when he's alone. But if they don't listen to them, then uh, uh, the third point is there, that you know that this is a wrong practice. Now the next thing is in Makkah, they do very long dua. Uh, so the ruling is the same for every imam, whether they are imam of Kaaba or big masjid or small masjid. That if somebody is doing anything against whatever Salaf were doing, then that is not a good practice. Uh, it's not they are doing it not separately, rather they do it as a qunut of Witr. So in qunut of Witr, it's open to do any dua. So as far as it's a qunut, it's not like specific to Khatme Quran dua, it's the dua of qunut. So when they got the opportunity there, uh, they, they can do dua. As far as dua is not separate, then whatever name they name it, that will not make it as something which is clearly innovation, as if somebody is separately doing that. Uh, and the thing is, some imams, they do very long on 27th night. Some imams, they do it very long on different night. When I said that this is a wrong practice, whatever way you do it every day, you do it on specific day, you do it on the last day. The practice in itself is not the practice of Salaf or practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these questions, that whether they can do it on specific day, why are they doing it last day, why are they doing it on 27th night, these questions should come forward only if initially we say that doing long duas are perfectly all right. When we said that they are not perfectly all right in the first place, then the other questions are irrelevant. Whether they do it on last day, whether do it on 27th day, whether they do it every day, whether they do it randomly. The thing is, doing prolonged dua, this is not a good practice.